It is almost unimaginable that the opposite team could overcome such a heart-rending display. But if anyone can do it, it is Jon Glaser. Let's see if he plays Scott Anna.
Cintra began by thanking Sara for illustrating her points, and I would like to thank Cintra for doing the same on behalf of children. That slideshow set to adorable music would be 100% different. In defending childhood being the better part of one's life, I thought about walking up to the podium, saying summer camp, and then walking straight out of the auditorium. Followed by my teammates, all of us heading out the front door for a 2-word victory dinner. But I'll expound. When you are an adult, you are far removed from the pure joy of being in 6th grade summer camp. For example, the pure joy of thinking it's cool and funny to swear. So much so that when your counselor, during a softball game against another bunk, which your bunk is leading comfortably, something like 18-6, I don't remember the score, but we were up by a lot. And your counselor, being the good counselor that he is, decides to intentionally and obviously pretend to lose an easy pop-up in the sun, and he drops the ball, allowing the other bunk's base runner to reach first. A kind and funny gesture, to be sure, that even 6th graders can understand as altruistic and tolerable, given the circumstances of the huge lead. So much so that you, being one of those understanding preteens, decides to, and again, to make this clear, thinking that you are also being very funny by doing so, say to your counselor, with a huge smile on your face, a lot of swagger, letting everyone know this is funny what's about to happen. In mock rage, clearly mock rage that he dropped the ball, say, "Oh man, Mark, you fucking cocksucker!" Looking around to see how you just nailed it. But no one is laughing. Especially not your counselor. It does not go over nearly as well or as obvious as your counselor's gesture of dropping the ball. He does not see the humor and chews you out in front of all the other kids. Mortified, you can only stammer as you try to explain you were trying to be funny, but he has none of it and orders you back to the bunk. You turn and begin your walk of shame, cheeks flush with the familiar warmth that precedes tears. You try to play it cool and walk calmly, that, the scolding could not possibly bother you, no big deal. Just gonna head back to the bunk, whatever. I just called my counselor a fucking cocksucker. You think I give a shit? He tells me to go back to the bunk? I don't fucking care. Have fun playing the stupid game. So you play it cool, you walk, you round the bend. Once you're out of sight, the floodgates open. You are sobbing uncontrollably, so upset, sprinting back to the bunk. Get into the bunk, tear open your trunk, find your notepad and your pen, and immediately start writing a letter to your mom about how much you hate camp. There's no mention in that letter that you called your counselor a fucking cocksucker. No reference to anything, just I hate camp. Now at this point, I would imagine there's a lot of people thinking that this sounds like a case against childhood. The shame, the preteen angst, the humiliation, and I can see the point, and I would probably agree, if not for what happened next. What I then did with this letter that I wrote to my mom, I will now present as why childhood was the superior time of life. As adults, we become consumed by thought and fear, general things about, is this right? Is this wrong? Should I say this? What are the ramifications? And will this person like me? Just, we're consumed and I think directed by fear. An adult wouldn't have the capacity of thought in the middle of this supposed trauma of getting chewed out and being upset about camp to see opportunity. The opportunity to drive home a point in the purest way possible. An adult wouldn't see the tears rolling down one cheek and in that moment realize those should not go to waste. An adult wouldn't then tilt his head toward the page, letting each tear roll gently towards the precipice of the cheek, hang delicately, precariously, perfectly, with the right amount of speed, just jerk the head towards the paper, let those tears fall onto the page. Each tear landing as safely as one of God's raindrops onto soft glass. A wet spot forms where the tear hits the page, no larger than a dime. Then another, and another, and another, probably a half dozen, just the right amount, perfectly spaced out on the page. An adult wouldn't think to circle each tear stain. An adult wouldn't think to draw an arrow pointing to each stain. An adult wouldn't think to write the word tear next to each arrow, indicating what was in the circle. And an adult wouldn't think to sign the finished letter, "Your crying son." I don't look back on that moment as a negative in my life, as a terrible time in my childhood. I look at it as a time of being swept up by pure emotion, of giving into full impulse and spontaneous creativity and freedom of expression. No concern for judgment or ramification. Realizing that only a few days after this traumatic event, there I am. I'm walking hand in hand with my mom and my counselor, walking through camp, talking about it. Everything's fine, laughing. Me, confident in the knowledge that I'm an 11-year-old boy, I got to call an adult a bad name, and now everything's fine. Empowered, I reached the end of the summer, ready to head out into a bigger, scarier world. Ready to face whatever odds came my way. Ready to say, "Okay, life, give me your best shot, you fucking cocksucker." Thank you.
Jon Glaser, ladies and gentlemen.